Be right with you, folks.
Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Hello, everybody. Hello. It is always great to be here with you. This is Michael Voss, Dragon of the Southern Tier, and I appreciate and I thank each and every one of you for being here with me. You guys make it all worthwhile. I thank you so much for being here. This is Saturday, the 26th, and it's an early day. I hope everyone's seeing the question of the day, which should be up there. If you enjoy the one-on-one interviews that we do here at the No Soundbites Allowed podcast. And I speak about that because we've just finished this week some interviews with Assemblyman Clifford Crouch of the 122nd District of New York. This week we finished an interview with State Senator Fred Akshar of the New York 52nd District. Those interviews have just gone up, and you actually have gone up this week. The interview with State Senator Fred Akshar came out last night. These are audio only, so you can go to the No Soundbites Allowed podcast site, which is the vosspolitical.podbean.com, and you will be able to hear the full video. And this way, if you're driving or walking around, you can just check it out. Listen to our conversation with a couple of our politicians who have been involved in fighting for the public, fighting for you on a lot of issues. And we go through a lot of the issues that are affecting everyone. Job creation, helping small business continue to stay in New York State, making New York State affordable, trying to protect your rights, and looking forward to the future of what's going to be happening here in this state as much as possible. And of course, we're also, and I know a lot of politicians pay attention to these podcasts. They listen in, not only the ones I do it with, but of course, other politicians regularly listen to the program to hear what your comments are, to see any notes that you leave, to see whether or not people are paying attention and what they're interested in. And so it's another way that you get to put your voice out there to let politicians know how you feel about all the issues that affect you every day. So it's very important. Please do note that. I know I'm still trying to get County Executive Jason Garnar to come in to do the interview that he's promised. I know we were going to do it in December, got pushed to January. Now it looks like it's going to be in February. Hopefully we will get that interview. I'm just waiting for him to give me the date. And we also similarly are waiting for Binghamton Mayor Rich David to contact us so that we can do our interview with him. We've been looking forward to that since the State of the State, actually even before then. And so we're still looking forward to getting that final date so that we can interview Mayor Rich David. And there's a few other politicians that we're looking forward to speaking to in various stages of trying to make the announcement. And hopefully we'll get that all taken care of for you very soon, and we'll have more dates and more interviews. I think it was a great interview this week with the politicians we did speak with. Very candid conversations, very honest conversations about how the process of legislation has gone on, how much input the Republican Party, who are now the minority party for the first time in decades, how they're being taken, they're listened to in our state government. Is Cuomo listening to anybody, or is he just dictating what's going on in our government? Is the state legislature under the Democratic control looking for the best interest of the public, or are they just pushing out an agenda that they haven't been able to get forward in 40 years? Or are they just running down their wish list of everything they've ever wanted to get done in the last 40 years and haven't been able to do, and so they're doing it now? Or are they actually listening to people and saying, hey, this is what the public wanted, so let's put that through? And there's a lot of bills like that. I mean, and that's why we're going to be talking about a couple of things. We'll be speaking about abortion. We'll be speaking about Anthony Brindisi, the government shutdown, talking about the pending gun legislation for next week, the Gillette ad. We'll be talking about CPAC and a lot of other things. Now, obviously, the most important thing is we're going to be talking about you, what you think is important, what is on your mind, how you feel about these ideas and these issues. Because I can say anything I want, but that doesn't matter. It's about you. It's about your thoughts, okay? Because I'm here to speak with you guys. And I'm here to help you guys talk about the issues, get different perspectives. And I want to say hello to Ken McClinton. Kenneth McClinton is here. He's going to be joining me, and I wasn't going to announce it quite yet, but yes, since you mentioned it, Ken, for a lot of people, no one knows this. I was waiting for today to announce it because I think it's great news and it's really important. And so let me start off with announcing that. Newsflash. I do so love my sound effects. And yes, the newsflash is that I can announce that I will be attending the CPAC for 2019. That's right. We're going to be going to CPAC, and I will be broadcasting live from CPAC 3 out of the 4 days that the event will be going on. Now, in case you're wondering, what in the world is CPAC, right? And I want to get the name correct because I always mess it up. This is the Conservative Political Action Conference of 2019, okay? And what that means essentially is this is a gathering of conservatives, libertarians, and Republicans. They all come together once a year to talk about the issues and the legislative agenda for the United States, and also for the states and for the cities. This is a major gathering in Washington, D.C., of all of these individuals looking at the issues that the public are most interested in. And it's a very difficult event to get into. This is national coverage. The biggest news organizations will be there. And this year, I will be there, along with a few other podcasters. Ken McClinton will be there as well. And we're going to be talking from a local perspective and a podcaster perspective about the issues. We'll be having interviews with many of the national notable individuals there, Republicans and libertarians and conservatives that will be at the event, and we will be speaking with them. So essentially, we're going to have the same coverage, same access that you would see coming out of ABC or Fox News or, well, MSNBC really won't be there, but they'll be there. But those guys too, I mean, we're going to be competing with the nationals. And so I hope everyone will be looking forward to that and will join us while we're there. It's going to be fun. And I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be great. I'm already trying to see if I can get Deneen Borelli and a couple of others who are going to be coming together, Candace Owens, try and get a few people together to interview live for you. And it'll be a mix of video and audio that'll be presented for you guys while I'm there for those 3 days. It's going to be a fun trip. It's an expensive trip as well. By the way, you see the donation bar up above? Very important. Besides trying to fix all of my equipment, some of it's a little bit older, but also for the CPAC, I'd like to eat some food while I'm there because it's expensive. And I do want to say we got some help in getting down there and covering the cost. It's a very expensive trip for a member of the press to go down there. We got some help with that to help take care of us getting down there and the right to be able to broadcast from there. It's very hard to do. And that took up almost everything, and worked out some arrangements with a couple of other people to be able to have a place to stay while I'm down there instead of just a cardboard box. So that took up a lot. So now it's just down to being able to food and cost of the equipment and that. So anything you can do to help, we do appreciate. It makes a big difference. If you hear background noise right now, that's my coffee machine, because what keeps me going is coffee. Yes, it is. And my coffee maker is always active, and that's why I look so tired, is because I don't sleep a whole lot. There's so much news. There's so many things to cover. And to things like, and I've been on Ken's show. It is a fantastic show. And it's going to be a great thing. I mean, to be down there, to be representing Binghamton, New York, Broome County, the Southern Tier, we're going to have an exceptional time talking with people about the issues that are going to affect everyone here locally, everyone in the state of New York, everyone throughout the nation. Ken's going to be representing the D.C. area. We've got a couple of other friends who are across the country that are going to be representing other areas as well, asking these politicians and the people who influence the politicians, saying, hey, what is on your mind? What are the top agendas out there? And I know one of the top agendas has to be abortion. That's like one of the biggest things. And I think everyone would agree abortion is a huge issue. And I'm going to get to it, but not yet. Please bear with me. I'm not going to talk about abortion just yet. First, rather, I want to talk about a couple of the other things, because I know once we start talking about abortion, it will go insane. Everyone's going to lose their minds. And that's normal. That happens all the time. But instead, let's start off a little bit relatively tamer and then build into it. Okay? If everyone is willing. Again, this is a program with you in mind. So it's about your questions, your thoughts, what you have to say. And by the way, Linda Vasquez, it's good to see you. Always thank you for your support. Love to see you here. And yes, just in case anyone was wondering, is Linda Vasquez related? Yes, she is a family member. And there's no reason why family can't pop on in and say hi and enjoy the show just like everyone else. So there. But I do love the support, and I thank you for being here with us today, Linda. And Ken. And Ken, please pop in anytime and say anything you want about CPAC, some of the things we're going to be doing there. Ken knows a little bit more about the details than I do at this moment. So if you want to pop in some information, that's fine. If anyone wishes to call into the program, please give me a heads up before you dial so that I know you're calling, because during the show, I really keep the volume on the phone down so that it doesn't interrupt our conversation. But I do, of course, always want to give people the opportunity to call in if you wish, besides being able to contact us on Twitter or to contact us on here on Facebook. And we're always open to your thoughts and to anything you have to say. Let's go into a little bit of this week. It's been a crazy week. How many people saw the Gillette ad? And I put out 2 posts on this, and I say again, Gillette, Procter & Gamble, shame on you. I mean a Game of Thrones kind of shame on you. How dare you, Gillette? That they came out with this commercial that basically hates its consumer base. 70% of the consumers of Gillette product are men. And Gillette decided to jump on the social justice bandwagon and decided to say that men are the most evil creatures out there. I can tell you that I personally took the offense and said, besides the fact that I don't buy Gillette anyway, I will never buy Gillette, because that's insane. That they would disrespect their audience so much to come out with such vile hate to describe men, all men, as bullying, rapist, evil creatures, violent thugs running around just looking for an opportunity to bully or to rape. I'm sorry, I don't agree with that. That's not what men are. Is that a portion of the population? I'm sure, a micro portion, but that isn't what a man is. Just as in saying that just because you can have a baby, that doesn't make you a father. So let's get this clear. And I reject this kind of classification saying that, well, you're a male, so therefore something is wrong with you. Somehow your actions are wrong. Somehow you can't think straight. You can't act properly. I'm 50 years old, and I've lived around the world, and I can tell you, while there are people who are less than desirable, they're jerks, and they exist, no doubt. And they can be men and women. They can be straight and gay. They can be black, white, Asian. Every stripe and type of person that is on the planet can be a jerk. That has nothing to do with whether or not they are born a male or female. That's wrong. And to say that and to implant that idea in the youth of our nation so that they can grow up thinking they are fundamentally flawed, that there is something fundamentally wrong with them just because they exist is, well, first of all, it's I forget which ism. I would say it's probably, is it sexism? It would probably be sexism. There's so many isms out there nowadays. But it's definitely bigoted and biased. And think about that. If you said to someone, well, you're a woman, so that means you're evil, they will lose their minds. How dare you make such a statement to say that all women are evil or wrong or violent or rude or quiet or anything? Because how dare you say that? You cannot say that about an entire race, a group of people. How dare you? If you said that about blacks or Asians or Native American Indians, if you said anything like that, that they're all some kind of bad, negative person because they exist, you would be labeled as one of the worst kinds of people in the world, and you would be thrown off of news, and you'd be thrown off of TV and banned from Facebook and Twitter and all social media. But if you say that about men, and especially if you're saying it about white men, then you're perfectly fine and it's okay. You can put out a national ad saying how evil white men and men in general are, and that's okay. But if you were to say it about any other group, you'd be condemned. Can anyone not see the logic here and why I say to Gillette and Procter & Gamble, shame. Shame on you. A Game of Thrones shame on you. And that you should be doing a walk of shame down from, one end of the coast to the other coast of the United States so you can have penance because it's wrong. And maybe you agree with me, maybe you don't. And if you don't agree with me, if you think I'm wrong, if I'm missing something here, is there some kind of statement that you could make saying that any other group is evil or fundamentally flawed and wrong because they exist? And you can say that. Please tell me what is the name besides Christians. We're not talking about religion, but you can do, because they are also being very persecuted these days. But if there's another group, please tell me which group that is, and that's somehow I'm wrong in my understanding about what Gillette was doing, because it is a negative. It is the worst thing you can do. And that's my opinion on it. And maybe you agree. I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts, because if I've missed something here, I want to understand what I missed. I want to understand, and if you can educate me and show me how I've got it wrong, hey, I'm all ears, because I want to know what's the reality. Please tell me what is the reality, because I don't see it. I do not see it like that, but we'll see. So that's one of the things that happened this week. And I came out with a comment about it, and I believe there was, and I still have it here. Do I have it here? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. The response to Gillette.
What is a man? Is a man brave? is a man a hero?
Now, I can't really do more of that response video, which was done by eGuard Watches. As you can see, there was about 3 million hits on this so far. It's done very well. It's well received, and it's a great description and discussion about what men are. Another viewpoint, answering the question that Gillette puts out there: are all men bullying, rapist, evil beasts running around the streets? And the answer is, as eGuard points out, no, we're loving fathers and brothers and individuals here in the society, helping to protect people, live natural lives, raise kids, and be productive members of the community. That's what men are, overwhelmingly, every day. Now, and you want to say, well, that's not always true. You're right, it's not always true. There are always one or two people who are not great people. Pick any group you want. I'm sure we will find someone who is not a wonderful, upstanding, perfect vision of that group. We don't judge the entire group because of that one individual. So let's keep everything fair and even-handed here. And I thank and I respect and I look forward to eGuard Watches growing because they pointed out that reality and made a very respectful response saying, no, men aren't just evil rapists. They are wonderful, loving fathers and brothers and sisters and cousins of everyone out there. So that's just one of the thoughts I wanted to go over today. And there's a few things here, as I said. So let me go on. There's a few other things we want to talk about here today. And yes, I had to put on the glasses because I'm tired. And I just want to type out something to the people out there listening. And what I'm saying to everyone out there is, Gillette is wrong, I think. Did you see my response? Simple enough. And we'll see what people say about that. But let's go on to Anthony Brindisi. Representative Anthony Brindisi is coming to Binghamton, New York. He's going to be here today. In part, his reason for being in Binghamton, New York, after doing his phone town hall, is because he's looking to help raise money, I believe, for County Executive Jason Garnar. County Executive Jason Garnar, at this moment, is having an event raising money. He's going to be running for an election next year, so he's raising some money this year. Pretty standard stuff for most politicians. And I believe that Anthony Brindisi is going to that event, and then after that event, he will be going over to post American Legion Post 1645. I believe it's American Legion Post 1645 here in Binghamton, New York, where he will be present for an hour or so talking to the public. This is to make up for the event that he missed last week because of the snowstorm that came through in New York. And he did have a town hall, which was done by phone, which I, as a public service announcement, I recorded the entire event from beginning to end, minus 3.5 minutes where I was talking to members of his staff, because as soon as the event started, I submitted a question. And it took 3.5 minutes for his staff to put in that question. And I was put in the queue to be able to ask the question. Within the first 30 seconds, I had already done this. And it seemed, now I don't know if it was because of the number of people who had questions or if it were because of the fact that they know who I was, and so they chose not to take my question or allow me to ask Anthony Brindisi a question. So I never got my question answered. And for people who are wondering what is the question, and I've said this publicly before, the question was in reference to the government shutdown. And I was asking Anthony Brindisi, he had come on to WNBF. He still hasn't lived up to his promise to actually do an interview with me yet, which he's given for 2 years straight. But he came in, he went on to WMBF, and he said the shutdown for $5 billion was ridiculous. But he did not say if he was willing to vote for $5 billion funding for the border wall. He did not say if he would make a compromise and would be willing to vote for some amount less than $5 billion to build a border wall. He didn't say if he supported the compromise issued by President Trump to be able to fund a border wall. So he's saying that it's ridiculous to shut down the government over $5 billion, but he isn't saying what is he willing to do to forward the government to build that wall and move everything forward. Now, as it turns out, he did join with many Republicans trying to get the border wall built and to open up the government against the wishes of Nancy Pelosi. He was one of 13 Democrats that broke ranks with Nancy Pelosi and actually voted to build a border wall, to open the government while funding the border wall. Didn't get a lot of press on that. He got 2 days of coverage for swearing in. He got a day of coverage for just co-sponsoring a bill. But when he voted on the border wall, breaking with Nancy Pelosi, he got almost no coverage whatsoever. No one wanted to talk about it, which I find interesting. So he had the public town hall, which, by the way, it's great to know that he's able to have a town hall and be able to show up in person now, because he doesn't have any death threats coming from the very same members of the far left that threatened the life of Congresswoman Claudia Tenney. So his supporters who wanted to kill her are not willing to kill him. So it's nice to know that he can actually show up in public because they're not crazy radicals against him. And that should be noted. But I am glad that he is having the town hall. He's going to be present. I will be there. And I'm looking forward to talking to you, Anthony. I've known Representative Brindisi for 6 years now. We're in maybe 6th year. And I'm looking forward to being able to see him and to ask some questions. In particular, where were you were you or were you not in Puerto Rico? He has yet to make a comment about that. We have yet to see any answer about that. There seems to be some communication errors from the Congressman, Anthony Brindisi, to the public, because there's a lot of questions that are very simple questions. Some of them are yes and no questions that he is just not answering. And I don't know why. Part of it could be that he has a problem, and it seems to be a rather big problem, because when you're looking at in government, we're seeing that he's been mentioning in his town hall, he mentioned several times how he is breaking from the leadership, in other words, Nancy Pelosi, and how he's having arguments with Nancy Pelosi and how he's upset with the Democratic Party on a bunch of issues. Now, I find that interesting because he is a very progressive He is a progressive Democrat based on his voting history and the support that he got. Citizen Action, one of his biggest supporters in the Southern Tier, Indivisible New York, one of his biggest supporters throughout Central New York. And yet he is breaking with the mainstream of the Democratic Party. So he's falling in line with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, it appears. And he's being very vocal about it. And at the same time, he's understaffed. He's making less and less money. He has less and less money to put out a staff to be able to take care of the public. Are they connected? I think so. And if that is the case, that's a problem. That's a problem for everyone in our district. Because if he's arguing with Nancy Pelosi and she's deciding to not give him enough money to get staff, and he's being delayed in being able to get staff, that means he's not going to be able to take care of the constituent questions about, for veterans, people getting their pay, getting their Social Security, issues with the government, anything that they would normally get help with. He has less of an ability to do today than has been done in the past. That's a problem. And if it continues, then we're going to see even more problems. So, and he highlighted this himself. Listen to the audio. This isn't my thought about it. This is what he said. He himself has said that this is a problem. So I look forward to seeing him today. Maybe he'll answer some questions. Maybe he will even say that he will do an interview and actually give a date, which he seems to be avoiding. And I've talked to him, his staff. No one's giving us a date, so we'll see. So he's going to be in Binghamton. I look forward to seeing him and talking with him there, and we'll see how that goes. So let me move on to something perhaps more interesting for a much larger group of people. And so now it's on to gun legislation, which is one of the big issues that I think it's pretty common knowledge that I am a major advocate for the Second Amendment. Always have been, always will be. And I have no problem admitting that and saying very clearly to the public and everyone that I am an advocate of the Second Amendment. I'm proud to say that. And we all should. The Second Amendment is vital to our nation. It guarantees our freedoms, and it's the reason why we can do the things we do in our nation without someone just walking up and shooting you in the head and killing you, as happens in many nations. Matter of fact, in Venezuela right now, socialist Venezuela, there is total anarchy. There are somewhere around 500 police officers roving around the nation, killing people randomly because the public is not able to protect themselves. They don't have a right to firearms to protect themselves like we do here in this nation, as one example. And you can point to other socialist states like China, like Russia, North Korea. You can just go through the list, where you don't have these freedoms and these guaranteed rights. You see anarchy and violence from the government against the people on a regular basis. That's just a fact. It cannot be disputed because it's true. It's just an absolute truth. So gun legislation is a big deal to me. And I'm not saying that we should have the Wild West, although the Wild West isn't quite as wild as people tend to think of because they're thinking of movies. And that's the problem. In most gun legislation we see, it's based around an idea of some movie that has no basis in reality, that somehow people are living in a world of Die Hard or, I don't know, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, some kind of Westerner or an action film. But that's not the reality. We're not living in the world of Terminator. We're living in the reality of now, and people aren't running around with firearms just shooting them off willy-nilly. And most of the time, they never have, even in the Wild West. As much as we romanticized it, it's not the correct image and the correct history of what happened out there. So we have to ask ourselves a very simple question. Kids, if you see me smoke, don't smoke. Do not smoke. It's too expensive. It's way too expensive. So we have to ask ourselves, we do also recognize that there are a very small number of people, less than 0.0001% of the population, that are a problem. Okay? And there's nothing that can be done about that. I mean, that is an incredibly infinitesimally small number of people. Out of 330 million people, out of 160 million gun owners in the United States at this moment, half the nation owns a firearm. And the number of people who are out there doing mass shootings and school shootings, we're talking about a number that is in the hundreds versus the hundreds of millions of people that exist in this nation at this moment. But we need to be able to try and public safety, take care of as many people as possible, as often as possible. And I agree with that. That's an important thing. So the question we have to ask ourselves is, where's that balance? Because every time we pass a new law, as I mentioned to State Senator Fred Akshar yesterday, whenever we have to balance this, when we have to say, okay, I have this law, and then I have my freedom. And every time we pass a law, I have less freedom. That's just a trade-off. That's how it always works. To be able to have these laws, you have to give up some of your freedom. And so, excuse me for that. And so, I have to say, is it worth it? Is some of the things in New York State is the testing ground, by the way. If you did not notice this, we're saying that New York State is being used as the proving ground, the testing ground, the experiment for the 2020 presidential election. So everything you're seeing happening right now is going to be coming out in the 2020 presidential race. These are the arguments that are going to be presented to the public in terms of a late-term abortion, in terms of gun control, in terms of immigration reform, and whether or not there should be a path to citizenship. These are all going to be issues that are going to come up in 2020, and they're being tested right now in New York State. And so we have to ask ourselves about the gun legislation. Does it make sense? Is it reasonable? Are we sacrificing too much of our freedoms for too little of a result? I mean, how are we going to be safer? And I actually did an article about that this week, that if we look at the top and the most likely gun legislation to be passed next week in New York State, will the public be any safer? In fact, I looked at the issue of Islamberg. And when we look at Islamberg, which is in New York State, there was a death threat, a bombing threat that was presented there. 4 very young men were going to go to Islamberg and blow it up. That was their idea. And they built bombs, and they had gathered firearms from their family members so that they can go and do this. It was stopped before it could happen. Thank God. And so we found out about the plot, and the police acted on the tip from a student who heard about this, and they were able to stop this. And I applaud them for that. That was great. That's how our government is supposed to work. That the police hear about it, the police hear about an incident, and then they stop that incident. They investigate it, and they make sure that the public will be safe. The laws that we need to have that happen already exist. So if you did not pass another piece of gun legislation or a red flag bill, guess what? The law already exists that if you are aware of something that could be dangerous and impact negatively the lives of even one of our citizens here with us, that the police can investigate and act on that and stop it. The new laws are not necessary for that. So we're not in some kind of gray area where the law doesn't exist to be able to protect the public. It does, and it actively happens every day. We just don't hear about it in the news very often, but it's there. So that's a problem with this new legislation, is we already have laws in place that work fine. The question is the government actually, law enforcement and the government, are they actually using the laws that exist properly and efficiently? And the answer is, more often than not as much as we would like. They could do it better. But when they do it, it works. So the question is not, do we have the right laws? Do we have enough laws? They're there. That's not an issue. The question is, what else? Now, let me ask you. And I went through and I have an article on this on Islamberg, and if the gun legislation proposed will make anyone safer. And this is a test I believe in. For us to pass a law that affects the rights, the absolute guaranteed rights of each and every one of our citizens, does it make things better? Is it effective? If it is not effective, if it does not make people's lives better, why in the world would we do it? Why would we restrict ourselves and inflict make our lives harder and less free if we're not getting anything for it, if it's not worth the trade-off? Because all it does is empower the government and elites within the government. It doesn't help anyone. And that's probably a perspective that no one has heard about. That's probably one of the things you have not heard discussed in the major media. And that's why I'm here. It's a question that we should ask every time. And we really should ask this in New York State, of Governor Cuomo, of the Democratic legislature, of any of our politicians. Is this worth the trade-off of our freedom? Is this more of a benefit to the public, or is it a benefit to a group of elites in government? There's a big difference there. And I have to say, I have yet to hear any of the legislation other than one bill that actually makes things safer for the public. That is being proposed and will probably pass next week. I mean, I'm seeing reports that some of these laws are going to be passed Monday. They're going to go straight from debate and straight into a vote and made into law without any debate, without any public commentary. And you have to say, why in the world would that be the case? Why would they want to rush this through? And the answer I have to believe is because if they had to actually discuss this, they're going to come to the same conclusion I do. No one is made safer. This doesn't help anyone. And I'll tell you what I mean. There's the red flag legislation, which I've done a lot of research on. I've spent months researching this. I have spent months looking at the laws and legislations across the United States to see, is this making anyone safer? And the conclusion that I have been able to find, and as proven in 2 different studies that have been done on the red flag legislation that has existed for well over a decade now, no one's safer. It doesn't change anything. It doesn't make anyone any more safe. That's not just my opinion. That is the fact of the numbers that are out there. It doesn't prevent suicides. It doesn't stop crime. And it doesn't stop mass shootings. It doesn't work. Period. But yet they want to pass it here in New York. All it does is make life more difficult for law-abiding firearm owners in New York and, of course, in the country. It puts a burden on them. It puts a stigma on them, but it doesn't make anyone safer. It makes the government more powerful. It makes certain politicians more powerful, but it doesn't help anyone in the nation. That's just a fact. It has not. And I look forward to seeing any of the advocates of the anti-Second Amendment advocates out there. Please show me the documentation, which I've been looking for well over 7 months, 8 months, actually a year now. I have yet to see legislation, any documents, any studies that show that this makes people safer. It doesn't exist. In any state there's 7 states that have it. Connecticut has had it the longest, since 1999. It has not worked. Has not. Duke has done a study on it. I believe the University of Indiana did a study of it as well. There's no proof. So that's one of my big ones. But there are other bills. There's a bill that's out there that says, essentially, and it just came out this week. Most people don't know about it. It's a proposal, I believe it's by State Senator Kevin Parker, a man who absolutely hates the Second Amendment and has virtually admitted as much, that, and actually I want to do breaking news on this because I know a lot of people just have no idea this exists. Just nobody knows about it. Newsflash. Okay. So this week, a bill was proposed by, I believe, State Senator Kevin Parker, but a bill was proposed that it would require every person who wants to get a permit or renew their permit for any firearm, that they would have to get a training and they would have to take a test and they would have to be able to use this firearm at 90% proficiency to be able to get a permit. So you have to take a test and you have to get a 90 on it in shooting to be able to be allowed to have a firearm. Guess what? There are trained Navy SEALs that don't have that proficiency. There are snipers that don't have that proficiency. There is a large number of police officers that don't have that proficiency. It's a standard that is the bar of that standard is insane. And I will explain how it is insane very, very simply. If there is a woman out there right now who is considering a way to protect herself from abuse or rape, whether it's spousal abuse or anyone else's abuse, she's afraid of, there is a reason for her to be fearful of abuse, and or she is fearful of rape. And she has reason for that. And she wants to have a means to protect herself. Because she can call the police, of course, and I would always suggest that you should do so. But if she calls them, that's going to take 3 to 5 minutes, depending on where you live in the nation. And it could take even longer than that, especially in upstate New York. Even in New York City, it can take a long time. And people die in that time sometimes. That's a reality. That's a fact. So a woman may need another way to protect herself. And if she chooses the option of being able to be armed, to be able to take care of herself, to own that firearm, to protect herself in that extreme circumstance, according to Democrats in New York State, the answer is a woman who has never held a firearm before in her life has to be able to shoot that firearm with a 90% proficiency. She has to shoot better than a sniper, better than trained military personnel to be able to get that permit. And just think about that. She has to shoot better than 90%. She has to shoot better than military personnel who train on this daily. And if she isn't able to do that, she can't have the protection from rape and abuse that she's seeking. That's what Democrats are saying. That women don't deserve the ability to protect themselves. And I'm sorry, it's just a reality. You may be, and I should say maybe progressives rather than Democrats, because I think Governor Cuomo and most of the legislature that's in there right now, they're progressives, not Democrats. So there should be that difference there. But can you imagine if they honestly told women that they don't want you to have a firearm to protect yourself from rape or abuse unless you can shoot better than a Navy SEAL sniper? Really? Really? How well do you think that would go over? How many people would support that? And why would you? It doesn't make anyone safer. It doesn't help anyone. Now, mind you, should people be able to just fling bullets all over the place? No, I'm an advocate. I believe in having people have training to be able to use a firearm. I believe in people going down to the gun range and being able to train and learn how to use a firearm properly. I agree with that, absolutely. But Democrats have bills out there that they're looking to pass where you're not able to get more than twice the capacity of a gun. So you get maybe about 20 rounds for every 6 months to be able to go to a range and practice, to be able to be proficient with a firearm so you aren't spraying bullets everywhere, which we see rarely ever happens. That's not normal. And they're denying people the ability to try, to test and learn and try and become proficient. And they want people to have a high proficiency. In other words, they're just trying to find a way to make sure that women who are trying to defend themselves against rape and abuse, they're trying to make sure that they can't get the ability to do that. That's what it works out to. They don't want to word it that way. They don't want to tell you that, but that's what it works out to. That's the function of the law. They can say it's meant to do X, Y, and Z. It doesn't matter. The function is they want to take handguns and firearms out of the hands of women trying to defend themselves. I disagree with that. I think women should have that right to defend themselves if they wish. And that's a sad thing. That's a sad thing. And we should know about that. People should know that that's what they're looking to do. How about there's another one where Democrats, they love to say that they're there to try and help poor people. Guess what they're not doing? Poor people are not able, or the idea is that they want to stop poor people from having firearms, which would be disproportionately people of color, whether you're black, Hispanic, whatever. That you're not going to be able to, because of the income, you're not going to be able to have a firearm because they want to pass a law that says that you need an insurance, a multi-million-dollar insurance policy if you own a firearm. Now, besides the fact that it costs over $600 in New York State to get a permit in the first place for a handgun, and it costs so much, and this is money that you will never get refunded back. So if you get denied, you're never getting that money back. So you have to spend $600 to be able to go through the process of applying for a permit. That's a burden. I mean, if Democrats are saying people can't afford $10 to get an ID card, then how do they expect people to spend $600 to get a permit for a firearm? I mean, did anyone stop to think about that? They're saying that people, we have to change voting laws because people can't afford a $10 or $15 ID, but they want people to spend $600 that is non-refundable just for an application to see if they can get a firearm. Wow, that's unfair. If they're talking about $10 being unfair to people and restricting their freedoms and rights, how can you say $600 is absolutely perfectly fine for people trying to exercise their rights? It doesn't make sense. That's stupid. But let's go on with it. So they want you to, if you somehow, you're poor, you spend the $600 to get the application, you somehow are able to be 90% proficient with it. They search through your social media and they don't find anything that they don't like in it. Not that you broke the law anywhere in this process, but that they don't find anything that they don't like because you're Mother Teresa or something like that. And so there's nothing objectionable. You get the permit and you're able to have it. And now you have to have a multi-million-dollar insurance policy for the accidental or purposeful death of anyone, which is expensive. Anyone who's dealt with insurance will tell you that's not going to be cheap, and it's not meant to be. So even if you could get even if you could afford the $600 to get the permit, and somehow you got approved because they search your social media and you Google and you've never looked at porn in your life, and you've never said a negative word ever in your life on social media. Ever. You've never had a search of anything for college or just in life in general, something that you're curious about, or you mistyped something and what you did not expect to showed up on your screen. That's never happened to you ever in your life. You're able to get this permit and you get the firearm and you can shoot like, I don't know, better than the best in the world. And then so you've gotten through all that, and now you've got to pay an exorbitant amount of money to get insurance to be able to protect yourself from rape and abuse and defend your home and your kids. Really? Tell me, how's that helping anyone? Please tell me what criminal, let's think about this honestly. Please tell me what criminal, one, is going out and getting a permit for their crime. And as far as I can find in all the research I've been able to find, there are a handful of people who have ever gone out with the express purpose of being a criminal and got a permit. They don't do it. That's why they use illegal guns, so it can't be traced back to them when they commit a crime. But that's why they have illegal guns. That's why that's a whole other thing. But so we're saying that there's a criminal out there that is planning to get a permit, spend money, get a permit, go through the proficiency test, go out there and be able to shoot better than snipers, that they're going to get insurance so they can go out and commit crimes. Really? Let's remember something. Criminals break the law. That's their definition. This is what they do. They break the law. They don't care. They don't care whether or not there's supposed to be an insurance policy. They're there to break the law. Criminals don't care if there's a proficiency test. They're there to break the law. They don't care if about any of the laws, training, anything. They don't care. They're criminals. That is their point and purpose. They expect to break the law. And we expect that by making it harder for women and men to protect their families, their homes, their children, by making it financially impossible for them to afford this, to make them jump through hoops, to discourage them from even attempting to exercise a constitutional right that is a bedrock of our nation, they are saying that by doing all of this, you're going to be safe. Something that no criminal will ever do. And if we look at Islamberg, where we saw a bomb threat against citizens of the United States, there is no thing that I have mentioned that those individuals did. They were illegal to have handguns. They had them, as I understand, based on early reports. They had firearms that weren't theirs. They took them from family members and other individuals. Firearms that they were not able to have, they took. So they have illegal possession of firearms. So they already broke the law. They built bombs. Think about that. They built bombs. That is illegal. You can't even get a license for that. You cannot get a license for that. They had possession of bombs. They built bombs. They broke the law again. They didn't worry about whether or not they were proficient with the firearms. So there's another one. They didn't care about whether or not they had to get insurance. So that is another problem with that. I mean, think about it. What in what I have described that is about to be passed next week, starting on Monday, the 28th, name anything in there that is going to protect any citizen from a criminal who is not doing anything that they mentioned. These are not laws against criminals. These are not laws to make people safer. They are laws to disenfranchise the public. They are laws to enslave people to a government that wants more power and the public to have less power. It does not benefit anyone. If we wish to trade our freedoms for safety based on a law, which is the normal process, we should at least make sure that law is effective and beneficial. Because what's the point? Seriously, what's the point? If these series of laws, as I'm going through them, are not going to make anyone safer, if a woman who is fearful of rape or abuse is not encouraged to be able to carefully and with training to be able to protect herself legally, because the government says we'd rather see you raped than have the firearm, I'm sorry, I disagree with that. I disagree with that. I don't know, maybe I'm crazy. I mean, does that make sense to people? And I know whether you're seeing this live or whether you're seeing this on video afterwards, I seriously have to ask you, does that make sense? Have I missed something in this? Is making the burden higher and harder for legal firearm ownership something that 160 million people have right now and own 350 million guns right now? There are more firearms in the nation than there are people. Half the nation owns them. In New York State alone, 20% of the population owns firearms. The firearms are not deadly in and of themselves. We know this because there are more firearms than people. Half the nation owns them. 20% of New York owns them, and we are not seeing people rampantly dying left and right. We're talking about 99.999% of the population are safe and legally law-abiding with their firearms. And we want to raise their burden while criminals who have no burden because they follow no laws will continue to not follow laws. How does that make anyone safer? How does that stop a criminal? How does a criminal, let's say, and I'm using rape because of the Gillette ad. That's the only thing, it keeps running through my head. But let's say that one of these Gillette people decides that they want to go out there and they want to go on a rampage of violence and raping. And tell me, which one of these laws is stopping them from doing that? Which one of these laws is going to make people safer from that rampage? Which one of these, again, I go back to the real world, Islamberg. And if you notice, you never hear these politicians quote real situations, real events, where their laws would be applied to a reality and have a positive outcome, because it doesn't exist. You can apply this to the Parkland, Florida shooting. You can apply this to the American Civic Association shooting here in the Southern Tier in Binghamton. These laws don't make anyone safer. The public does not have a benefit. Why are we passing these laws? And that is a question I would suggest everyone who is watching this go and ask your state representative, your assemblyman, or your state senator, your legislators, your mayors. Ask Governor Cuomo. How does this help anyone? Please give me the example of how this is helping the majority of people, because I have yet to see one case in law or one example where this is helping the majority of people, even the minority of people. It's not helping anyone. But I can come up with lots of examples of how it doesn't help everyone, except criminals. Criminals are the only people that are being helped by this. So we have New York State, and as an example, because of this experiment, it will be tried nationally. So they're going to use it in New York State to try and make it a law across the nation in 2020, and it will make no one safer. It will make criminals better. Criminals will love it. And that's kind of sad when we're looking at our government trying to help criminals more than they're trying to help the individual. So and there's a lot more of these laws. I mean, there's the Safe Storage Act, which is insane, because the only way that it can be proven that whether or not you're properly separating your bullets from your magazines from your firearm, which this law requires, in different locations in the home, in different safes, besides making it functionally useless to be able to protect your own home, it in addition requires that the government has to come into your home to make sure that you did it. So you lose your Fourth Amendment. Something that State Senator Kevin Parker is more than happy to steal away your Fourth Amendment rights and give the government the ability to find out all of your privacy. He doesn't believe in privacy. I wish he would open up his doors and let us see his private life. He doesn't want to do that, but he's a politician. He's a Democrat in New York State. How dare you ask to see his private information, but I have to give him all of mine. That's just insane. But let's move on. Let's move on because there's a couple of other, well, let's actually get to it. Let's talk about abortion. I know it's crazy. I mean, I wanted to talk about the State of the Union, but I went a little long on the gun legislation. And these are my ideas. Please, people, if you don't agree, I mean, I'm open. I'm looking to talk to libertarians, conservatives. I know there's Democrats out there that are watching this. I know that there are politicians who are watching this and trying to see what's being said out there. Fantastic. Please, tell me where I am wrong. I'm not saying that I am the smartest guy in the room. I'm not the smartest guy in the nation. I admit that. I know that. Tell me if I am missing something here. I have spent months, years actually, in supporting the Second Amendment and looking at these laws and analyzing these laws. If I am missing something in my analysis, if there is information that is out there that I have yet to see that disproves my belief, let me know. I've talked to every organization out there, Gun Owners of America, the Religion of Arms, Liberty First Foundation, some of the NRA, Scope, Warm Barrel News. I mean, I've talked to organizations both local and national in New York State and across the country, and I have asked them all these questions. Tell me where I'm wrong. I have spoken to politicians in the Democratic Party, Libertarian Party, Conservative Party, and the Republican Party, and also members of Citizen Action, asking these questions. I've asked it from members of government from congressional level down to the local level, and I have yet to hear anyone tell me that my analysis and the information that I have is wrong. But if I am wrong, please tell me. Tell all of us. Because if you can't, then the only thing that is being done is a punishment of people exercising their rights. And that is vile. That is vile. You should never punish people for exercising their rights. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. But as I mentioned, I want to go on and talk a little bit about abortion, because that's a big deal, and it's an important one, and it's a hypersensitive one. So I wanted to put that off a little bit. So it's now abortion time. And it's a sensitive subject, I know. And I don't expect, I ask that when people are talking about this, when people are looking at this, when you're commenting, whether it's here live, you send me contact information at my Twitter, which is @mvconsult, or you're reaching me at my email, info@vosconsult.com. If you're reaching out to the websites, please be civil. I know this is an emotional issue. I know there's a lot of people who have very strong feelings for and against this. I get it. I have strong feelings about it as well. I've already heard from a lot of people on both sides of this issue with very strong feelings about it. And I respect that. I enjoy that. I thank you for that. But let's try not to vulgarity, assumptions that some group is evil or demonic or insane. Let's stay away from that stuff. Let's actually just talk, because we're not going to get anywhere with the hyper emotion. It doesn't help. Everyone shuts down. No one listens, and no one wants to have a discussion. And everyone's going to say, well, your feelings are not worth as much as mine. I mean, if we apply the Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez standard to this, where, well, I believe I'm morally right, well, then you can do anything in the world you want, and everyone else is wrong and evil. And then we go nowhere, because everyone's on that morally right, whatever they feel position, and every other position is therefore wrong, and you can't compromise from that. You can't reach a common ground. Now, based on that common ground, let me say first and foremost that I am almost entirely pro-life. I mean, I'm torn between absolutely a pure pro-life position and a choice position, because I believe it is life, and that this is destruction of life. This is murder. But there are circumstances where I can understand, and I'm willing to compromise my position and say, in understanding that not everyone shares my point of view. And this is a nation where we must compromise to live together. And to give people that option that they request and they have a right to ask for and to have, I have to compromise. So abortion exists. I get it. I don't like it, but I get it. And that's my opinion. And I have a right to it. So anyone who's saying, well, I'm a man, so I don't get a right, I'm sorry, you can't make a kid without a man. Yeah, and this is a personal thing. Would I want my kid aborted? Personally, no. Other people, maybe. I can't speak for them. So personally, I understand. And everyone has a valid point in this. And they have a voice in this. But there is that compromise. And the compromise has been consistently late-term abortion is wrong. Abortion, when the child is viable, is wrong. That's been our understanding. That has been a compromise point, a point that we can all look to and say, yeah, we get it. You know, this is too much. This is wrong. To go out there and to say that, this child that can be born either through C-section or naturally and would be able to breathe air and live should be killed, that's wrong. And both because of technology and also because of just life, children in, the 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th months are able to live. Let's think about that. They're able to live. And traditionally, we have seen that a birth that is in the 6th month or beyond normally has not been legal to abort. That's been the law consistently until now. Because the Democratic Party for many years now has been trying to put in late-term abortion. They want the ability to kill a child that is viable, that is able to live outside the womb for years. They've been trying to get rid of that. That they want the ability to kill that child that could live. And we're not talking about the conception question, which is a different question. We're talking about viable. There is no question that this is a baby, that this is a viable baby. And so they passed the Reproductive Health Act, which we are going to see in the 2020 presidential election. This is a question that is coming from New York. The testing ground is New York. And if the testing shows, since it has passed, and if the far left is in love with this, as they are, then you're going to see that in the 2020 race as an issue. That, we should be able to abort a 9-month-old baby, or a 8-month, or 7th month, or even 6th, possibly even 5th. That there is no time frame where you cannot kill that child. And the law itself actually does say that. The law itself, I know a lot of people want to focus on when they point to it, well, no, it says, the 24th week, up until the 24th week. By the way, they use weeks to throw people off. We know there's 4 weeks in a month, so they're talking about the 6th month. So a baby who's 6 months or more cannot be aborted. That's what the rule has normally been, even though Democrats have lowered that number down to, actually, it's an increase of how long you can go before you can abort a baby. It used to be about 20 weeks, 5th month, and anything after that you could not. And now they've increased it to 6 months, so they added a month into late-term abortion term, and then into the 3rd trimester, they're adding that month, and then they're saying after that, well, no, you can't do it, unless there is a reason to have fear. Unless it is deemed necessary. I believe that is the exact term, is if it is deemed necessary. Wow. That's a very big, vague, it doesn't need a doctor. This is something that can be done by an authorized person. It could be a doctor, a nurse, an authorized individual can make the determination that it is necessary in the 3rd trimester to kill a baby. That's what the law says. So you can make all the you can say, 24 weeks, 6 months, there is a limit in there. No one's saying that it's going to be late term. No, the law does in fact say that. The law does say that if it is deemed necessary that you can abort a 8-month term baby. You can. And I'm not going to say fetus because it's not a fetus. 8 months, it's a baby. 7 months, it's a baby. This is someone who can be born and live outside the womb. That's a baby. There is no question on that. We can't argue that. You can argue about conception all you want. When is it life, when it is not life, but you can't argue 7, 8 months. That's a baby. And there is no reason why at that point you can't have the baby born. And they will or will not live. And there's questions, should we be supporting adoption? Should the state be involved more, even with children who have disabilities? And I'm not one for just outright killing every child with a disability. That's euthanasia. And I don't know many of the people who are out there saying that they believe in abortion would say they believe in euthanizing babies or anyone else. But that is what it is in fact doing. Especially if the choice is based on, well, this child may or may not have disabilities. And I'm not saying that you can't make that choice. I am not saying that. I am saying we're not looking at this discussion properly. Because the way the discussion is framed right now is anything is perfectly allowed. The law says you can do anything. If it is deemed necessary and it does not require a doctor or a nurse to make that determination. That is what's terrifying. Unqualified individuals, because if you're not a doctor, you're not a nurse, I don't know who else is qualified to determine if the medical condition is a danger to the mother. By the way, they won't even mention the term mother or woman or female. They say individual. I'm sorry, the only individuals who can actually carry a child are women, period. I don't care what else you want to, you can claim anything else you want to be, but if you're carrying a child, you're a woman. You're a female. You are biologically a female. It's the only way it works. I can't carry a child. I'm a male. Just won't happen. So there you go. But the law is playing those games too. But it's a very simple, and I'm not trying to be overly emotional about this. I'm not trying to be, I know people take this very personally, and it is personal, even for me in discussing it. It's personal. We've all had experiences, good and bad, in this subject. For those of us who are, over the age of, I'll say in the mid-20s and beyond, we either have had this experience or we've known people who've gone through this experience. And so it's influenced us, and we have a certain way of looking at it. And I'm not denying anyone's personal experience or their personal feelings. We're talking about law. Law is not a personal feeling. As much as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez would like to make it seem that way, laws are not about your personal feeling. They're about the public and the benefit to the public and what is right for the most number of people based on the compromises we are willing to make from one extreme or another. The extremes of pro-life and the extreme of pro-death. And by the way, you cannot say you are in favor of abortion and not say you're not for death. You are. You're killing babies. That's not a question. You can call it a fetus. You can call it whatever you want. You can call it a zygote or whatever. It's a life. You're killing that life. You don't like it? That's fine. I didn't say you have to like the answer. The fact is, that is the answer. So to be in favor of that, and I'm not saying, and specifically, I am talking about late-term abortion. Late-term abortion. There is a problem there. So trying not to be emotional here and trying to just have this discussion, I have to say, I don't get it. I don't get why we would want to allow, or why New York State is imposing this referendum, this legislation, this absolutism about this. You know what would have been the best thing in the world? And I'm surprised it hasn't been done. put it up for a vote. Make it a proposition, put it on the ballot, and ask the people of New York, do you want to support late-term abortions? In the third trimester, should New York State or people in New York State be allowed to kill a viable baby? Put that out there. And don't use the fancy words. Well, if it's 24 weeks, if it's deemed necessary by an individual who is not a doctor or a nurse, be honest about it. Do we accept that we, as members of New York State, are willing to kill a baby in the third trimester? Yes or no? Let the public vote. Take it out of the hands of the politicians. Put it in the hands of the public. And if the public votes for one or the other, then that's what we do. I'm not even touching any other aspect of abortion. I'm not even questioning any other aspect. I'm not asking anyone to change any other aspect of it. Just in that question of the third term. Can we at least agree on the third trimester? I mean, we should go by from the moment that child is at the latest, in terms of late-term abortion, when that child is viable going forward, well, there shouldn't be an argument. It shouldn't be possible. And the sad thing is, I hear a lot of people say, well, it's all about it's medical. No. The majority, the overwhelming number of majorities of abortions, I believe it's about 80%, are done not because of medical conditions. Actually, I believe it's 90%. They're done because it's an elective process. It is a choice. It is a form of birth control. That's the reality. I understand that's not what the intent of the law is, but that is the fact of the law. That makes a big difference. So you can hide behind, well, that's not what the law intends. Well, the way the law is worded and the way it has been used says that this is what it is. I don't care what your intent was. I don't care what your excuse is. This is what is being done. And we should at least have the moral fortitude to stand up and accept that that is what the law is. And I've heard from several politicians who voted for this bill. I've heard from several politicians who voted for this bill who are trying to tell me, well, you just don't understand. I've read the bill. Deemed necessary. Does not require a doctor or a nurse. It's in the first paragraph of the bill. That's late-term abortion. That's third trimester abortion. That's what the law allows. That may not be the intent, but that is the function. And we know abortions are used functionally as an elective, as a form of birth control, not for, overwhelmingly, not for the question of someone's life. We should be at least morally honest with ourselves enough to be able to say that's what's going on. And if we agree or if we do not. And the reason why it's important is because this is going to be in the 2020 election. Absolutely. And so whatever you feel about it now, get ready, because that question's coming up. And you have to make that decision, as all of us do, looking at who's going to be running our country and therefore setting the tone on all of this. Maybe you agree with me. Maybe you disagree with me. Maybe you hate my guts. Maybe you think I'm a good guy. I don't know. I'm pointing out part of this discussion. This is the discussion that should have been done by our elected officials, in particular Governor Cuomo, before they just rammed this down through the guts of everyone in the state. This is the discussion that should have happened. And it's uncomfortable, it's unpleasant, and people will be upset on all sides of the left, right, independents, men, women. People are going to be upset about this. You can't discuss it without some people being upset about it. That doesn't mean it doesn't get discussed. That doesn't mean that you don't have the conversation. It just means that you have to have the conversation while being upset. And you need to be as calm as possible to have that conversation. And I'm trying to do the same. I'm not assigning people as good or bad people because they have or want an abortion. That's not the question. Don't go there, because that's not what I've said, and that's not what I mean. What we're talking about is, do we wish to accept late-term abortions, which would be equivalent to a form of murder, because viability exists. Therefore, that question is real. And I've seen a lot of people who are saying that they don't. And we've seen a lot of states that, Ohio's about to pass a heartbeat bill, which would invalidate late-term abortions. We know that Iowa has passed, and it has been deemed unconstitutional, but they did pass and sign a law that for the heartbeat, which invalidates late-term abortions, and now it's in the courts. And we are absolutely sure to see this go through the court system and be challenged probably on the constitutional level of, does a heartbeat signify life? If a heartbeat ending signifies death, does a heartbeat existing signify life? Especially in a late-term baby. Especially in a late-term baby, because that's what we're really talking about. We're talking about late-term. And I have to ask, why is it so important to be able to abort a baby in the 7th, 8th, 9th months? Why do Democrats absolutely demand that we must be able to kill a viable baby in the 7th, 8th, and 9th month? Whether someone is doing it in a lot or a little, why is that necessary? Rather than just birthing the baby, putting them into adoption, or if you're asking me would I pay for a child in state care or adoption because they were born in 7th, 8th, 9th, yeah, I'd like my money to go there. Would I like my money to go to that versus some of the other things that they're trying to use my money to give some illegal alien free college? It's not a debate to me. If I have to choose about whether I would help support children being born versus illegal aliens getting free college, yeah, it's not a challenge for me. It's not a choice. It's easy. You may disagree. Let's talk about that. Let's have that discussion. We should, as a society, have that discussion. And if the discussion says that, yeah, that's what we do, then that's what we do. That's why we have a democratic, a representative democracy. It's a tough one. It's a tough issue. I still got a few minutes here, and I do want to go on to, I talked about a little bit about CPAC. I do want to talk about one other thing. And that is, and I'm going to take a little extra time to talk about it here at the very end. As some people may have noticed, I've written a couple of articles about Dan Livingston. Mr. Dan Livingston is a city councilman for the city of Binghamton. Mr. Livingston has had a lot of ethical issues since the day he got elected, literally. And it's been documented. I've written articles about this showing the law, what his actions are, what he has done to violate the law and ethics consistently. And recently in January, he did it again. He's been very consistent. He has a pattern of ethical violations. Even though he's been reprimanded for this and told not to do these things, he continues to do these things. And now, because I have highlighted this, there are some, and in particular WNBF, which is a talk news radio station, they decided that to highlight and to let the public know that someone is committing ethical violations under the name and the guise of transparency, that I'm somehow evil and wrong. Not that I'm not called evil and wrong for a whole host of reasons, but this is their particular reason, that I'm somehow doing damage, especially as a member of the press, that I'm doing damage because I'm saying that having one person have all the power and control over providing transparency and documentation to the public about what government is doing, to say that one person having total control over that is wrong. They think that I'm somehow trying to kill the ability of the media to be able to investigate and report on the government. I think it's stupid. And I'll explain exactly why in a very simple term. Here's a very simple example. Give me the power. How about I'm the only one? This is the example. And to show you how ridiculous this is, I would be the only person to be able to have the power to record, edit, and publish anything that the state of New York is able to do. Anytime that Governor Cuomo is going to speak, I would be the only person who would have access to creating a recording, editing that recording, and publishing that recording at a time frame that I decide in my discretion to do so. And I am willing to, and I could be able to cut up those meetings so that the ends of meetings are not reported on. Or I can have a particular emphasis on one political party or another political party because I have all the power and control. There is no other oversight. Would anyone agree to that? I can tell you I wouldn't. I think that's wrong. That's not transparency. That is using transparency to promote a political agenda or a personal agenda. I don't think that is not freedom of the press. That is not transparency for the public. It is hidden by that. It makes it sound like that so that people go, oh, well, it sounds like it's a good thing. It sounds like it should be transparent. No, it's not. When one person who is a questionable person with ethical issues already documented for years, when they have the only power and no one has access to any of the information they have, no one has access to being able to see how that information is being used and how it is being disseminated at the discretion of that one person, that's not transparency. That's control. That's control. Now, obviously, WMBF doesn't agree with me because it seems they have a personal preference for Mr. Dan Livingston. And that's fine. You can like Councilman Livingston if you want. I personally don't know him, don't care about him. I don't care if he's a good guy, bad guy. Absolutely meaningless to me. I've given him the opportunity to speak on the record. He denied it. Okay, that's his thing. He could have said anything he wanted. I would have published it. I always have for everybody. Democrats and libertarians and conservatives and Republicans alike. And they don't all agree with me. I've pissed off Republicans as much as I have Democrats, as much as I have everybody else. So I don't care about that. I don't care. It's not personal. I don't know him personally. I don't care about him personally. I care about him as a member of the government, local government, and local government using the issue of transparency to promote an agenda by the isolation of power in the hands of one person, especially one person who's very questionable based on their history, recent history and actions and words, then yeah, I got a problem. If WMBF doesn't realize that, that's on them. And if he can't see past the idea that one person having total control is a bad thing, then I don't know what to say to you, WMBF. But I can say that I don't agree with it. And yeah, I'm going to call that out. And yes, I think that's an issue that the public should know about. And you want to tell me that I'm a bad person and I'm doing something wrong because I'm saying that there should be oversight and that there should be more people involved in that process so it's not partisan and that it doesn't benefit any one individual or one party, and so it doesn't violate New York law that already exists, in particular New York Public Officer Law, Section 74, Item 3H. Look it up. Look it up, Bob. And the fact that the fact that WMBF is putting this message out there without, and this is the part that really gets me. You're going on air. You're telling people that I'm wrong, but you won't tell people I've written articles on this, citing facts, documentation received by FOIA Freedom of Information Act, that I have these documents from Freedom of Information Act, that I have witnesses and I have sources on this, that I have spoken to Councilman Livingston and given him the opportunity to refute any part of this that he wishes, and he denied doing so and admitted that he had done this, and he's done that on the record. So it is not a question about any of the facts that I have there, but you deny the public the ability to know that these facts exist so that you can promote your personal ideological feeling about this. That is wrong. That's not transparent either. You want to talk about transparency? That's not transparency. WMBF, please remember, there are sources, and this is readily available information that is free to the public. And you deny giving the public that information. How dare you? How dare you say that someone is being against transparency when you are actively not being transparent in your actions? That's just wrong. That's wrong. But that's my personal issue, and it's a public issue. It's a news media issue, and I have to say, you want to say that you don't like what I did? Fantastic. You want to say that you like Councilman Livingston? Fantastic. I don't care. Love him. Vote for him. I don't care. My issue isn't about that. But you can't tell me that one person having total control over what the public gets to see and hear is not partisan and is in the best interest of the public. You can't say that with a straight face. And because of that, you owe me an apology. But with that said, we've been talking about a lot of issues today, going over a lot of things. And so I just want to make sure that I wish everyone a great day. Be careful. There's ice on the roads. The snow's melting and then it's refreezing, so it's getting all icy. Please be careful out there. Please, if you found something that we spoke about today that you found interesting, that you loved, that you hated, you think I got it right, you think I got it wrong, especially if I got it wrong, tell me. Let me know. I'm here to speak with you. This is a conversation we're having. I'm hoping to make it a little easier to have that conversation. Let's have it. And most of all, please stay on top of what your local government's doing. Pay attention to them. And if you don't have the time, pay attention to me. I'm paying attention for you. And let's have these discussions. And I will try and get more of the politicians locally, and once I get to CPAC, nationally, to answer some of these questions for you. I look forward, especially for CPAC. If you have a question for CPAC, send me the email, send me a tweet, send me an answer on Facebook or one of the other access points I have. Let me know what your question is for any of the officials that will be at CPAC 2019 when I am down there, and I will make sure to try and get someone to answer that for you. All right? I thank everyone for your time today. I want to say it again. Everyone, whether you love what I have to say, whether you hate what I have to say, I appreciate each and every one of you. I thank you for taking the time to hear me. And I look forward to doing this again with you next week as we continue to stay on top of everything. Thank you, everybody. You have a great day.